men are losing their jobs and women aren't at the same rate speaks to the fact that this is solely a cost-cutting measure for businesses. It isn't good times stacked on top of the GDP that came out last week. You know, we are in a recession, whether it's been 2 quarters of downturn.
We got jobs numbers out this morning showing Canada's economy losing 25,000 jobs. That number alone feels heavy, but it becomes even more worrying when you look at the bigger picture. People searching for work are now facing one of the toughest hiring environments in years.
Like when we're looking at the broad scope of the economy, we lost a bunch of part-time jobs but added full-time jobs. So there's like all these little mixes in there, and it speaks to just how mixed the story of the Canadian economy.
In simple terms, for every 3 people trying to get hired, there is only 1 position available. That means more rejection, longer waiting, and growing frustration for workers who just want stability. The job market has taken a serious hit, yet the message from Ottawa sounds calm and controlled.
Unemployment is higher across all age groups, in men than in women. Maybe this is equality, or maybe it's that income disparity so that men are losing their jobs because they make more. And even if you're in a dual income family, that means a bigger hit. We cannot pretend that equal pay is a real thing for the majority of people, not just Canadians.
Officials keep repeating that things are stable, but many people don't feel that stability in real life. When you look at the last couple of months, around 66,000 jobs disappeared in 1 month, more than 110,000 vanished across 2 months, and then another 25,000 were lost in January.
Weight on the economy. You look at the manufacturing sector, lost another 28,000 jobs. It's really hard out there. And it's really hard for workers. It's hard for employers trying to figure out how to navigate this. Like so much of your market, regardless of almost what.
We got jobs numbers out this morning showing Canada's economy losing 25,000.
Employment seekers are facing one of the most competitive markets in years. For every 3 candidates, there's only 1.
It becomes hard for ordinary Canadians to accept the idea that everything is fine when the losses keep piling up. Some analysts try to soften the picture by saying that while many part-time jobs disappeared, some full-time roles were added. They argue that the job market is mixed, not completely negative. But for workers, that explanation feels distant from reality.
Ontario got hit by far the highest, with 26,000 of those jobs being lost there, followed by BC and Alberta. Alberta lost 14,000 jobs, and their unemployment climbed to an all-time high since 2017, not including the pandemic.
A lost job is still a lost job, whether it was part-time or full-time. The mix might matter to economists, but to families trying to pay bills, the difference often feels meaningless. Unemployment numbers add to the confusion. One report shows the rate around 7.1%.
That one bright light that, sure, the unemployment rate went down. Isn't that great news? Well, it only went down because fewer people are looking for work.
Right.
So if you've got fewer people in the labor force, you've got a smaller unemployment.
Latest stats show Canada's unemployment rate dropped slightly to 6.5% in January, while the youth unemployment rate was at 12.8%.
While another puts it closer to 6.5%. Government voices quickly highlight the lower number, suggesting improvement. But a closer look reveals something troubling. Sometimes the unemployment rate drops not because more people found work, but because fewer people are even searching anymore.
The labor market is cooling. It's not booming. Nobody's saying the economy is reaccelerating. Nobody's saying hiring is booming. And nobody is saying inflation pressure is coming back because the labor market is tightening. They're all saying the same version of the.
When discouraged workers stop applying, they disappear from the statistics. That doesn't mean the economy healed. It simply means some people lost hope. If fewer Canadians are looking for work, the math changes in a way that hides the real struggle. The workforce shrinks, and the unemployment rate looks better on paper. But behind the numbers, there are people who gave up trying, people who stopped believing the system would work for them. That raises an uncomfortable question. Are we lowering unemployment by shrinking the number of job seekers rather than growing opportunities? Looking deeper into the January data, Canada lost 25,000 net jobs overall, and one sector stands out clearly. Manufacturing alone shed around 27,500 positions. The rest of the economy only managed to create a small number of jobs to offset those losses. That imbalance shows how fragile the recovery really is.
Is being hit by U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports. So when manufacturing weakens, it ripples outward. Less overtime, fewer hours, more caution, delayed purchases. We're seeing that all today.
In Ottawa, more than 600 people showed up to a single job fair that only had 21 employers.
Canada lost 25,000 net jobs in January.
Statistics Canada says that roughly 3 applicants are now competing for every job opening, and vacancy rates are at their lowest point since 2019. This slowdown isn't limited to one small industry or region.
Striking figure. Manufacturing alone lost about 27,500 jobs, and the rest of the economy only created a few thousand jobs to partially offset that number.
It's broad and visible across multiple sectors. Still, officials continue to describe the situation as a mixed story. But many workers are asking, mixed for who? For someone secure in their career, maybe things feel manageable. For someone sending out dozens of resumes and hearing nothing back, it feels like a wall. There are also differences across demographics. In several reports, unemployment is higher among men than women.
Large businesses can only cover the rising interest rates and rising payments for so long before they say we have to start letting people go. And we know that Canadians are spending less of their discretionary income. Have less discretionary.
A little bit more than a year ago. The interesting thing here is that we had seen a bit of an uptick, right? We had added like 200,000 jobs going back to the end of August. And everybody was saying, well, at some point it's got to give back. At some point we've got to sort of reverse to the mean here. And we've seen that. Though, I mean, it's only 25,000 jobs. It's obviously not great news if you're...
Some people frame this as equality in action, but others see a more complicated reality. In many households, men still earn higher wages on average. So when those higher-paying jobs disappear, the financial shock can hit families harder. In dual-income households, losing the higher salary can create serious pressure. Young Canadians are feeling the pain most sharply. Youth unemployment has climbed to around 12.8% in some data, while other estimates suggest that nearly 1 in 5 young people can't find work. That's the worst level since the last major recession in 2009. These aren't just teenagers looking for spending money. Many are students trying to pay tuition or help their families cover rent and groceries. At that same Ottawa job fair, one high school student said he had already applied to more than 50 jobs online.
It matters because manufacturing is not a fringe industry. It doesn't just affect factory workers. Small towns that rely on 1 or 2 major plants, the losses tend to cascade. They rarely stay isolated.
50 applications, and still no success. How many rejection emails does it take before someone begins to feel like the system is broken? We hear speeches about empowering young people and investing in the future, but empowerment feels hollow when 3 people are fighting over a single entry-level job. The strain spreads beyond youth. Manufacturing losses keep stacking up, with another large drop reported recently.
Annie Cannon-Guerra has the skills to compete.
I have experience in administration and program coordination, along with some experience in project management. So I am looking for a job that kind of aligns with that.
And today she hopes to find that.
I got laid off back in October of 2020.
Workers and employers alike are struggling to understand where things are heading. Business owners are unsure about demand. Employees are unsure about job security. Across industries, uncertainty has become the common theme, and uncertainty slows everything down. Several key sectors are bleeding jobs at the same time. Professional, scientific, and technical services, often seen as the knowledge core of the economy, lost tens of thousands of positions.
All of these deals have been going on. Mark Carney signed an MOU with South Korea just, 10 days ago to buy subs and get some kind of investment in manufacturing here in Ontario. So is this part of that?
Or at least consider buying subs anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Transportation and warehousing saw major declines as well. Manufacturing continued its downward slide month after month. When multiple pillars weaken together, the impact becomes hard to ignore. Regionally, the damage is uneven but serious.
66,000 jobs were lost last month. 66,000. Now, part of the spin that people are putting on that was, well, the majority were part-time.
Ontario alone lost tens of thousands of jobs, making it one of the hardest hit provinces. Alberta also saw large losses and rising unemployment levels, reaching heights not seen since before the pandemic period. When major provinces struggle at the same time, it raises concerns about the national outlook. There was one brighter number. Construction jobs rose by around 17,000. But even that comes with context.
Transportation and warehousing was down 23,000. Manufacturing down 19,000. Construction jobs, though, were up 17,000. Now, we can have a lot of, is construction booming? Is construction booming? Probably not. Construction usually does boom.
Construction often rises during warmer months because projects depend on weather conditions. Seasonal boosts are normal and temporary. If a recovery depends heavily on seasonal hiring, it may not be as strong as it appears. Businesses are reacting cautiously. They see tariffs, trade tensions, and unpredictable policy shifts, especially from the United States. Companies respond by delaying investments, freezing hiring, or reducing hours. Yet one comparison keeps surfacing. The United States faces many of the same global pressures, but its unemployment rate remains significantly lower. That contrast raises difficult questions about domestic policy choices. When leaders blame everything on global uncertainty, critics push back. If global conditions are equally tough for everyone, why are outcomes so different? That question lingers in public discussions, especially as workers compare conditions across borders. For someone struggling to find stable work at home, the difference feels personal, not theoretical. Another issue is how statistics can be interpreted. A falling unemployment rate sounds positive, but if it drops because fewer people are looking for work, the meaning changes. A smaller labor force can make the numbers look healthier than they are. It becomes a reminder that data needs context, not just headlines. Manufacturing continues to show the clearest warning signs. Employers say future demand is uncertain, so they hold back. Investors grow cautious. Hiring freezes become more common. That hesitation spreads across the economy. Uncertainty rarely stays confined to one sector. It ripples outward and slows growth everywhere. Some analysts link this hesitation to broader signals from leadership and fiscal policy. When governments talk about spending more while also warning about austerity, businesses may struggle to read the direction clearly. Mixed signals can weaken confidence, and confidence plays a huge role in hiring decisions. Economists increasingly describe the labor market as cooling rather than booming. They talk about aging populations, slower growth, and softer hiring trends. These phrases sound technical, but the real impact shows up in everyday life. Families feel it when hours are cut or promotions disappear. Parents take on extra shifts. Some households juggle multiple jobs just to stay afloat. When young adults can't find work, they rely longer on family support, adding pressure to already stretched budgets. Mortgage renewals at higher rates and stubborn grocery prices make everything feel tighter. At the Ottawa Fair, hundreds of candidates gathered in hopes of finding something, anything, that might lead to income. Stories like that reveal the emotional side of economic downturns. Behind every statistic is someone waiting in line, holding a resume, hoping for a chance. There is also a long-term concern. When young people struggle early in their careers, it can shape their entire future. Delayed work experience affects earnings, confidence, and even mental health. Some may eventually look outside the country for opportunities. If stable jobs are easier to find elsewhere, the temptation to leave grows stronger. The idea of brain drain stops being theoretical in moments like this. If a 22-year-old graduate sees limited prospects at home but stronger opportunities abroad, the decision becomes practical, not emotional. That potential outflow worries many observers who see talent as a country's most valuable resource. Some voices argue that the uneven job losses between men and women reflect cost-cutting patterns within companies. Businesses often target higher salaries first when trimming expenses. If that's true, it suggests deeper structural stress rather than temporary adjustments. Taken together, the signs paint a serious picture. More than 100,000 jobs gone in 2 months. Youth unemployment climbing toward recession levels. Multiple sectors shedding workers. Major provinces facing setbacks at the same time. It becomes harder to describe the situation as a mild slowdown. Supporters of the current outlook call it turbulence, like a temporary bump during a flight. But many Canadians feel something more severe, something closer to a downward slide. They wonder how many more months of losses it will take before stronger action appears. Manufacturing remains especially vulnerable because of trade tensions. Tariffs on exports make Canadian goods less competitive, reducing orders and cutting overtime. That weakness spreads through supply chains, affecting logistics, retail, and local communities. The ripple effect touches more people than the initial job cuts suggest. When officials explain the downturn, tariffs and global trade chaos are often the main reasons given. It's an understandable argument, since external shocks do matter. Blaming outside forces can feel safe and politically convenient. But the uncomfortable comparison they don't like to highlight is that the United States is also dealing with tariffs. Their unemployment rate just came in at 4.3%. Canada is hovering around 7%. That difference may look small on paper, but in reality, it is a very big gap. A gap like that usually points to deeper structural problems, not just a short-term slowdown. And that matters because manufacturing is not some tiny corner of the economy. It is not just about factory workers wearing helmets on assembly lines. Whole towns depend on 1 or 2 major plants staying open. When those plants struggle or shut down, the effects spread quickly. Jobs disappear in waves, local businesses suffer, and the entire community feels the impact. Manufacturing supports many middle-class families. These are jobs that often come with steady wages and long-term stability. But in January alone, Canada lost another 28,000 manufacturing jobs. That came after earlier losses, which means the trend is clearly downward. At the same time, professional services dropped by around 26,000 jobs, and transportation and warehousing fell by roughly 23,000. These are not small or random industries. They are central pillars of the economy. When pillars weaken, the whole structure begins to shake, and people start to notice the cracks. One major reason behind the slowdown is uncertainty. Employers are hesitant to hire because they don't trust where policy is heading. Investors also hold back when they feel unsure about future taxes or regulations. Businesses need stability to make long-term plans. When the rules seem unclear or constantly shifting, they become cautious. That caution often shows up as hiring freezes, delayed projects, or quiet layoffs. Take the example of job seekers like Marani Kanangara. She has real experience and real skills. She talks about her background in administration and program coordination, along with some project management exposure. She is not someone lacking qualifications. She represents the kind of educated worker the modern economy is supposed to value. Yet she has been searching for a job since being laid off in October 2025. Months later, she is still hoping to find something that matches her abilities. Stories like hers highlight how difficult the market has become even for capable professionals. Then there are large corporate signals that add to the uncertainty. Consider the situation with Stellantis. The company reportedly wrote down around $26 billion as it pulled back from electric vehicle expansion. That is not a small adjustment. Billions of dollars being redirected away from what was once called the future sends a powerful message. The Windsor battery plant also saw changes, with a South Korean partner stepping in to take a stronger role. Moves like that don't project confidence in Canada's industrial direction. Instead, they suggest companies are recalibrating under pressure. Government officials often point to global trade tensions as the main explanation. Trade wars and tariffs do create real challenges. But businesses don't just react to global forces. They react strongly to predictability. When companies feel they understand the future, they invest and hire. When they feel squeezed by rising costs and unclear policy, they cut back. Rising interest rates have already increased borrowing costs. Debt levels are higher, and consumer spending has slowed. Small businesses especially feel the pressure because they operate on thinner margins. Eventually, financial math wins over optimism, and layoffs follow. There are also questions about new international agreements and their timing. Some discussions mention deals involving defense purchases or foreign partnerships tied to manufacturing investment. While those announcements may sound promising, they also create confusion. People wonder whether these deals will actually create local jobs or simply shift control to outside partners. That uncertainty feeds public skepticism. Another sensitive topic is the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. This program has existed for decades, going back to the 1970s. In sectors like agriculture, it plays an important role. Canada relies on seasonal farm workers to keep food production running. Most people understand that reality and don't argue against it. But the conversation becomes more complicated when youth unemployment rises sharply. If 1 in 5 young people is struggling to find work, public perception starts to change. A controversy around a Tim Hortons job posting added fuel to that debate. The listing appeared to favor temporary foreign workers, which sparked frustration online. Whether every detail was accurate or not, the reaction revealed deeper feelings. Young Canadians see headlines about high unemployment and then hear stories about entry-level roles linked to foreign labor streams. That creates a sense of disconnect. Even though employers are supposed to advertise locally first, enforcement becomes the real question in the public mind. When 66,000 jobs disappear in a single month, it is difficult for people to stay calm. Some commentators try to soften the blow by pointing out that many of those losses were part-time roles. But for individuals who lost those jobs, the distinction offers little comfort. Income is income, and losing any paycheck hurts. Numbers like 7.1% unemployment overall and 12.8% youth unemployment cannot simply be brushed aside as background noise. Every percentage point represents thousands of real people. When more than 110,000 jobs vanish in just 2 months, public trust starts to weaken. People begin asking why the labor market feels tighter for them while certain industries still rely on imported labor. Transportation and warehousing, losing 23,000 jobs, manufacturing losing tens of thousands, and only limited gains in construction paint a complicated picture. Yes, construction added around 17,000 jobs, but construction often rises seasonally. Warmer weather typically brings more building activity, so that bump may not signal true long-term growth. Beyond employment numbers, fiscal policy also plays a role in shaping confidence. Discussions around government borrowing have raised eyebrows. Some projections mention roughly $225 billion new debt over 4 years, significantly higher than earlier forecasts. That kind of increase is not minor. It represents a major expansion of borrowing. At the same time, public messaging sometimes includes talk of austerity, which usually implies restraint. When the language suggests tightening but the numbers show expansion, it creates confusion. For businesses, confusion is costly. Both small and large companies are already dealing with higher interest rates and rising payments. They can absorb those costs only for so long before cutting expenses. Payroll is often one of the largest expenses, so layoffs become the easiest lever to pull. This process is less about politics and more about basic financial survival. Consumers are also changing behavior. Many Canadians are spending less discretionary income because they simply have less to spend. Rising living costs leave little room for extras. When consumer demand weakens, businesses feel it immediately. That creates a feedback loop where slower spending leads to reduced hiring, which leads to even slower spending. Economic stress can also bring social side effects. When youth unemployment rises to levels last seen around 2009, vulnerability increases. Families already stretched by layoffs and mortgage renewals struggle to absorb additional shocks. Historically, financial strain often correlates with higher petty crime or recruitment into risky activities. When legitimate opportunities shrink, some young people feel pushed toward unhealthy alternatives. Not long ago, there was a short period of job growth where around 200,000 positions were added over several months. At the time, some analysts warned that such growth might not last. They suggested the numbers would eventually return closer to the average. Now, with job losses appearing, that prediction seems to be unfolding. Losing 25,000 jobs in one report may not sound catastrophic alone, but it feels very different if you are one of the people affected. In moments like this, governments generally have two main options. They can try to stimulate growth directly, encouraging hiring and productivity, or they can focus on managing the social fallout that follows economic stress. That could include stronger support systems or tougher enforcement measures. Right now, however, neither path appears fully defined. There hasn't been a dominant national conversation about major policy shifts in either direction. Another challenge is the lack of clear long-term planning during uncertain times. Businesses want clarity. They want to understand future tax rules, subsidy programs, and infrastructure timelines. Instead, many feel they are receiving mixed messages. One report highlights rising part-time jobs, another shows falling full-time roles. Unemployment appears to drop, but only because fewer people are searching for work. The headlines say stable, but daily life feels strained for many households. This disconnect between official narratives and personal experience is what creates frustration. People read that conditions are holding steady, yet they see friends losing jobs or struggling to find work. They hear optimism in speeches but caution in boardrooms. That gap between words and reality can slowly erode confidence, which is one of the most important ingredients in any economy. When confidence fades, everything becomes harder. Businesses delay decisions. Workers hesitate to spend. Investors wait on the sidelines. Over time, that hesitation spreads through every layer of the economy. And while statistics can explain trends, they cannot fully capture the emotional toll. For many Canadians right now, the numbers are not just abstract data points. They are daily reminders of uncertainty, pressure, and the growing feeling that stability is slipping further out of reach.